So it's been a very busy couple of days for Tottenham Hotspur. And if some journalists are to be believed, then there's going to be even busier days ahead in the upcoming week. So I know that there's a lot of excitement regarding potential transfer targets, but I thought I'd spend a little bit of time today just to discuss one of the players who is coming back from loan, Ryan Sessegnon. I chose to focus on him because although he's going to be playing for Spurs this season, it seems like he's definitely going to stay. A lot of Spurs fans don't know what to expect of him. So I thought it'd be worth a shot just diving into his performances at Hoffenheim, how he performed there, and seeing what he can bring to Nuno Espirito Santo's Spurs. That still feels a little weird to say. So be sure to subscribe and hit that like button so you can follow all of these transfers and understand what they will be bringing to Tottenham Hotspur. Enough of that. Let's dive right on in on Ryan Sessegnon. So if Ryan Sessegnon is not really on your radar, I don't really blame you. He came in on the 2019-2020 season for Tottenham Hotspur from Fulham after a pretty long ordeal of a courtship and failed to really impress in his first couple of games. For that remainder of the season, he really wasn't involved that much, apart from a couple of cup games here and there, but he was still seen as too raw for really doing much. That being said, you have to also remember that the 2019 and 20 season were also where Pochettino's Spurs were really struggling. The entire club as a whole. So perhaps not the best environment for a youngster to come in and try to make a name for himself. That being said, something that Mourinho was very good at and during his tenure at Tottenham was sending young players on loan. Sending out players on loan can be fairly tricky. You have a lot of things to balance for the player. The player himself has to be very interested in the move and the team that he's going to play at and believe that he can progress and develop under that team. So one thing that you have to think about, of course, is the player's game time. Will he gain enough minutes playing for this team on loan? Also, what's going to be his role in the system that this team plays? Is it going to be something that might translate well over to what we're trying to do on our end? These are all crucial answers that need to be crucial questions that need to be answered. And unfortunately, some of these questions can be answered in the wrong way. Jack Clark is a perfect example of a loan that went wrong, loaned back to Leeds, barely played there, was just not used, and unfortunately, it's just a year wasted of his career. All that to say that this was not the case for Ryan Sessegnon. His move to Hoffenheim was actually perfect for him because he played so much. He was involved in 29 games over their season, and he played in a system that he was very comfortable with. So it was a win-win situation, not just for Sessegnon, but also for Hoeneß, the Hoffenheim manager, and of course, Hoffenheim itself. Typically, they played in a 4-2-3-1 system, but this could easily become a 4-3-3 in possession, and even a 3-2-5 as the Hoffenheim players entered the opposition's final third. Sessegnon was tasked as a left wingback, and he would share responsibility of playing out in the flank. Hoffenheim as a whole focused on crossing as a major way to create attacking opportunities. In fact, they were third in the Bundesliga for most crosses completed and attempted at the end of the season. One great case study of Sessegnon's play going forward is actually his last game of the Bundesliga season against Hertha Berlin. And Sessegnon was tasked with making underlapping and overlapping runs in order to create space and get a cross in. In fact, he averaged 4.33 crosses per 90 for Hoffenheim, which is the highest tally of the entire team and higher than any other Spurs player last season. Now, to be fair, Spurs as a whole did not cross as much as most other teams. In fact, they're 18th or 17th place in regards to their crossing overall. That just goes to show, however, what Sessegnon can bring in to the Spurs side with his crossing ability. It should also be noted that Wolves last season and the season prior under Nuno Espirito Santo got in more crosses than Spurs as well. So that within and of itself should tell you what Nuno expects from his left wingbacks, from his right wingbacks, and from flank play overall. Here's a brief example of how Hoffenheim look to exploit the left space and make chances through that flank. Grilicic has dropped in from his midfield position into the left back position, freeing up the space for Bebu in turn to drop deeper as well. This is occupying the Hertha Berlin players, and Sessegnon has made a run on the blind side and posted himself up high and wide to receive a long pass from his fellow center back, creating a 2v2 down the left flank. In fact, the more that I watched Sessegnon's playtime at Hoffenheim, the more I was reminded of Sergio Reguilon's own tasks in Tottenham Hotspur. They're both very, very similar players, and if you look up any free stat website like FBref or even Who Scored, you'll see that they have similar numbers in regards to most of their play. So very little sets them apart. Of course, there are some differences, and I'll get to that towards the end of the video and why I think Ryan Sessegnon might not be the best option right now to start big games for Tottenham Hotspur. This is why Sessegnon's play reminds me so much of Sergio Reguilon and what we saw of him last season. Reguilon is usually tasked with bombing down the left-hand side and exploding with pace in order to turn a turnover into an attacking play. Here we see Sessegnon doing the exact same thing as Hoffenheim have regained possession, are making a short pass in the middle of the pitch, but Hertha Berlin are caught out of position, as you can see with their left back having to turn around because of Sessegnon's run into the space behind him. Moreover, Hoffenheim were building up on the right side and then shifting the ball over on the left side to use Sessegnon as the free fifth man across their attacking line. Here we see one of their midfielders trying to split the defense into the space behind them so that Sessegnon can run onto the ball and either take a shot on goal or cross it. This occurred so many times that here we have another example against the exact same team and trying to execute the exact same pass, literally identical as you can see here. And again, it's all made so that Sessegnon can get into a dangerous position for either a cross or a shot on goal. In this screen cap, we see the center back playing a ball towards a midfielder as he drops deep, dragging the opposition right back along with him. This opens up a space for Ryan Sessegnon to run into, and with the right back, neither the right back nor the midfielders pressing the Hoffenheim midfielder, he has the space and time to loft the ball towards the space. Sessegnon is able to run onto the ball, carry the ball forward, and although there is an opposing Hertha Berlin player that tries to put in the challenge, as we see here, Sessegnon is able to get the ball across into the 18-yard box. The front man, Bebu, is making a decoy run, whilst the other player from the Hoffenheim team is cutting inside in order to latch onto the ball and score a goal. One way that Reguilon differs from Sessegnon going forward is just how they take their shots. Reguilon, on the one hand, seems to still have kind of like that youth development mentality of shooting on sight, not really taking his time with it, and essentially just being inaccurate when he shoots. In fact, out of 21 shots that he took last season, only 4 of them were on target and he scored no goals. Sessegnon, on the other hand, his stats might indicate that he's a bit more mature and composed on the ball going forward. Out of only 5 shots on target, 2 of them were goals. So he is taking a little bit more time and just deciding on when to shoot instead of shooting automatically when he runs out of ideas. All in all, at least moving forward, if you've seen Reguilon play, then you can expect Sessegnon to play in a very, very similar way. Maybe he'll get a couple more crosses in. That just depends on what Nuno expects of him. Maybe he'll do a little bit more ball carrying and a little bit more dribbling, as we saw in the Bundesliga last season. But overall, it's going to be fairly the same. Now, the reason that I think that Reguilon starts over Sessegnon, at least for the first couple of months of the Premier League, are a couple. So first and foremost, Reguilon actually has Premier League experience. I am not a huge believer that Premier League experience can be the end-all be-all of a transfer coming in. In my previous video, I talked about Joachim Andersen and how, yes, he looks good, okay, and he has that Premier League experience, but I don't know if that makes him that great of a player. And lo and behold, Spurs are now looking elsewhere. Not saying that I had anything to do with that, but I'm glad that they also recognize that Premier League experience might be a bit overblown. That said, Sessegnon is a very young player, and although he's played in the Premier League in the past, Reguilon has shown that he has the consistency to put in the same amount of effort every single match and also essentially just perform week over week, whether that be at a good to great performance level. We are yet to see that from Sessegnon. I hope that he can do that this season. But another thing that would make me nervous about starting him for big games or for the majority of matches would be his foul rate. He tends to commit fouls twice the amount of Reguilon. So I know that last season we were all very frustrated with the amount of fouls that the likes of Sergio Aurier and others were committing just outside the penalty box, simply because Tottenham were known for being very weak on set piece defending. So that's obviously something that Nuno will have to work out with the team. Here we see a perfect example of Ryan Sessegnon being dragged out of position and committing a foul. He is being dragged by the opposing right winger, who has made a run parallel to Hoffenheim's defensive line. Sessegnon has been dragged out of position because he doesn't want there to be numerical parity in zone 14 between the opposition players and the Hoffenheim defenders. There is a pass on, as you can see here, as there is a run being made behind the defenders and a simple pass that can break that can split that defensive line. So Sessegnon dives in, commits the foul. That might be a smart foul in some cases, but it could also be seen as a dangerous foul because it is a free kick opportunity for the opposition in zone 14. And finally, he's not that great in the air. He wins about 31% of his aerial duels, which is 10% lower than Sergio Reguilon. That might seem okay given that typically fullbacks, wingbacks don't have to get involved in too many aerial duels. However, this can be a weakness if the opposition identifies it as such and chooses to exploit it by sending in balls to the far post when attacking down the left-hand side. So all that said, I think Reguilon is the better option as far as aerial duels go, as far as getting the ball out of dangerous areas goes as well. After viewing a lot of Ryan Sessegnon's game, this is just one of many examples of one of his very, very bad clearances. The cross comes in from the left-hand side, and he mistimes his jump, and it kind of hits him on the side of the head instead of, on the forehead, hits his ear essentially, and it awkwardly bounces towards an opposition player marked here in black, who then takes the shot. It's not a good shot, fortunately for Hoffenheim, but that's definitely one mistake and one liability that Tottenham's defense does not need at the moment. So all in all, I do think that Sessegnon does have a part to play for Spurs. If nothing else, he's going to be a great rotation option for Reguilon, just to make sure that the side is not run to the ground like they were last season and frankly the season prior. Making sure that there is not a huge gap in quality between the starting 11 and the bench is absolutely huge for a sustained top four or even a title push. So Sessegnon will have a role to play this season, and he might be able to actually challenge Reguilon for that starting 11 place. Again, it all depends on not only his individual performances, but also how Nuno chooses to set up Tottenham. So what do you think about Ryan Sessegnon and him coming back from Hoffenheim to play for Spurs? Are you excited? Are you not really looking forward to it? Would you rather hear about other players? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time on my next video. Bye, guys.